There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just lingers. It sits in the silence after they pull away, in the unread message, in the delayed reply, in the way their eyes once held you like a secret and then suddenly looked through you, like you were too much, too close, too real. And that pain does something dangerous. It makes you reach. It makes you explain yourself when you've done nothing wrong. It makes you become softer, smaller, easier to handle. It makes you send one more message, then another. It makes you try to love them in a language that only teaches them they can leave and still feel your warmth waiting at the door. That is where so many people lose themselves with an avoidant. Not because they loved too deeply, but because they responded to distance by abandoning themselves first. And here is the brutal truth no one wants to say out loud. The more you chase an avoidant, the safer they feel leaving you. Because your pursuit becomes emotional oxygen for the very pattern that starves you. Your panic feeds their relief. Your intensity feeds their escape. Your constant reaching tells their nervous system, I will carry this connection for both of us. So they let you. Not always consciously, not always cruelly, but they let you. And the tragedy is, the harder you try to prove your love, the less they have to confront the reality of losing it. That is why this isn't about making an avoidant fall down for you. It's deeper than that, sharper than that. It's about understanding the one thing their entire system has spent years trying to outrun: emotional consequence. Because avoidants do not live in the same love story you do. When closeness deepens, it doesn't always feel like safety to them. It can feel like pressure, like exposure, like a hand reaching too close to a wound they've spent years covering with independence, charm, logic, work, distance, control. You call it connection. Their body may register it as danger. Not because you are dangerous, because their nervous system learned long ago that needing someone can cost too much. So when intimacy grows, something ancient activates. The amygdala fires. The body reads closeness as a threat to autonomy. Cortisol rises. The chest tightens. The mind starts searching for flaws, reasons, exits, distractions. Suddenly, they need space. Suddenly, your voice feels loud. Suddenly, your love, which felt beautiful yesterday, feels like something they need to escape today. That doesn't mean they stopped caring. This is the part people keep getting wrong. They didn't stop caring. They got overwhelmed. They felt too much. And because they were never taught how to stay inside deep emotion without drowning in it, they did what they have always done. They detached. They numbed. They delayed. They withdrew. They acted cold to avoid feeling consumed. And if you've ever loved someone like that, you know how insane it can make you feel. Because one moment they are warm, attentive, almost tender in a way that feels rare and sacred. And the next, they are distant, blank, unreachable. As if the intimacy never happened. As if you imagined the whole thing. You didn't imagine it. You touched something real. That is exactly why they ran. Because real intimacy doesn't just open the heart. It exposes every defense built around it. And this is where your power either collapses or begins. Because most people, when they feel that withdrawal, react from injury. They protest. They demand clarity. They over-explain. They try to pull the avoidant back into emotional closeness before that person has chosen it freely. But pressure never creates safety. Pressure creates more distance. This is why the one thing that changes the entire dynamic is not seduction, not manipulation, not strategic jealousy, not pretending not to care. It is non-reactive silence. Not punishment, not passive aggression. Silence with a spine. Silence that says, I will not beg for what should be given freely. Silence is terrifying to people who are used to your pursuit. Because when you stop reacting, they lose the map. They know how to handle your texts. They know how to handle your tears. They know how to handle your attempts to fix, repair, and rescue the bond. But when you become calm, when you stop rushing in to close every gap, when you let the absence sit where they created it, something begins to happen inside them that they cannot control with logic. At first, they feel relief. This is important. At first, your silence may feel like space. Their nervous system decompresses. The pressure lowers. The body settles. They distract themselves. They tell themselves, this is better, cleaner, easier. But then something subtle begins. Because without your constant presence regulating the connection for them, they are left alone with their own emotional echo. And silence echoes. That song you shared starts playing somewhere random. A restaurant reminds them of your laugh. Their phone stays quiet longer than expected. The dopamine they got from knowing you were there, available, emotionally invested, begins to drop. And suddenly, what felt like freedom starts feeling like loss. Not dramatic loss, not movie loss, psychological loss. The kind that creeps, the kind that enters through ordinary moments. They wake up and instinctively think of telling you something, then remember there is distance now. They reach for their phone and realize no one is chasing them. They notice the absence of your attention, your softness, your emotional availability. And that absence starts doing what your presence no longer could. It makes you real again. Because when you were always there, they could take you for granted without meaning to. But when you become still, they can no longer measure your love by its endless supply. Now they have to feel its disappearance. This is the paradox of the avoidant mind. They often feel safest longing for connection from a distance, rather than holding it intimately in their hands. Too close, and their defenses activate. Too far, and attachment awakens. So when you become truly non-reactive, not cold, but unavailable to the old pattern, their internal world begins to shift. They wonder if you're done. They wonder if you finally saw through the cycle. They wonder who you become when you are no longer waiting for them. They wonder if someone else will meet the version of you they kept touching only in fragments. And that wondering can grow teeth. Because mystery is powerful, but self-possession is stronger. You see, an avoidant is often accustomed to people collapsing around their distance. They are used to being the one who sets the emotional temperature simply by withdrawing. They pull back, and the other person spirals. They go quiet, and the other person overfunctions. They create uncertainty, and the other person starts proving. But when you do not perform that old script, the power shifts. Not because you are playing a game, because you are no longer available for one. Imagine it. They send a low-effort message after days of silence, expecting your immediate warmth. And instead of pouring your whole heart through the opening, you respond with steadiness. No resentment dripping through the words, no desperate relief. Just calm. They feel that more than they will ever admit, because calm is the one thing they cannot easily control in another person. Or maybe they disappear and expect you to come looking like you always did. But this time, you don't. You keep living. You keep breathing. You keep making your life so full that their distance is no longer the center of your emotional universe. That unsettles them. Because now the connection is no longer propped up by your fear of losing it. Now they must choose. And many avoidants only begin to feel the depth of their attachment when they are faced with the possibility that access to you is no longer guaranteed. That is when memory becomes louder. That is when curiosity sharpens. That is when they start checking, thinking, replaying. They may not come back with poetry. They may come back awkwardly, indirectly, with a random question, a small message, a strange little opening that pretends to be casual, but carries a pulse under it. Because even in longing, avoidants often protect themselves from full exposure. But do not miss what is happening beneath the surface. They are feeling your absence in the body now. The same body that once felt crowded by closeness may now feel haunted by emptiness. This is where many people ruin everything. Because the second the avoidant leans back in, they collapse into overgiving again. They feel hope and immediately hand away their center. They answer too fast, reveal too much, reopen every emotional wound at once. Try to lock the connection down before it has earned stability. And the avoidant, sensing intensity rising again, feels the old overwhelm return. Then the cycle resets. This is why your silence only works if it changes you. If it is just a tactic, they will feel the strain behind it. But if your silence is the natural result of self-respect, it becomes magnetic. Because then you are not withholding to control them, you are simply no longer willing to abandon yourself to keep them comfortable. That is the shift, and it is massive. You stop asking, how do I make them feel what I feel? And start asking, why was I so willing to bleed just to be chosen? That question will change your life more than any avoidant ever could. Because beneath the obsession with their withdrawal is often an older ache. The ache of wanting to be undeniable, unforgettable. Finally, enough. So when they pull away, it doesn't just trigger heartbreak, it triggers history. It wakes up every moment you felt overlooked, unchosen, half-loved, emotionally starved. And suddenly this person is not just a person. They become a stage where your deepest wound keeps auditioning for closure. That is why it feels so hard to let go. That is why their crumbs can feel like a feast. That is why your mind keeps telling you that if you can just say the right thing, do the right thing, become the right thing, they will finally stay. But love should not require the destruction of your dignity. And no, the goal is not to make anyone your slave. Listen carefully. If someone has to be broken to love you, it is not love you want. It is control. It is revenge. It is the fantasy of finally being the one who cannot be left. But true power is colder than revenge and cleaner than obsession. True power is becoming the one who no longer needs to force outcomes to feel worthy. The one who can be deeply loving without becoming emotionally available for mistreatment. The one who understands the avoidant, maybe even compassionately, without volunteering to be trapped inside their unfinished healing. Because yes, they may come back. Yes, they may miss you in ways that shock them. Yes, your silence, your steadiness, your non-reactive presence can make them confront feelings they spent months outrunning. They may chase. They may obsess. They may finally say what they could not say when you were right there. But if you are not careful, their return can seduce you back into the same prison with prettier lighting. So here is the warning. Do not confuse longing with capacity. Do not confuse missing you with being able to hold you well. Do not confuse their emotional collapse with your emotional safety. Someone can ache for you and still not know how to love you without hurting you. Someone can fear losing you and still not be ready to stop the pattern. And if you go back just because they finally feel your value, without watching whether they can sustain intimacy differently, you will teach your nervous system the cruelest lesson of all, that pain is proof of connection. It isn't. Instability is not depth. Withdrawal is not mystery. Confusion is not chemistry. And your worth is not measured by how deeply someone regrets underestimating you. Your worth is measured by what you no longer tolerate once you see clearly. So if you do this thing, if you become quiet, grounded, non-reactive, if you stop feeding the cycle and start protecting your inner world, yes, the dynamic may flip. The avoidant may feel the full weight of your absence. They may reach. They may finally descend from that cold distance and come toward you with unexpected vulnerability. But that is not the real victory. The real victory is what happens inside you while they are busy realizing what they lost. You stop living in anticipation. You stop monitoring tone, timing, crumbs, shifts. You stop calling anxiety intuition. You stop confusing emotional starvation with desire. And in that stillness, something powerful returns. You. Not the you who performs for love. Not the you who begs to be understood. Not the you who keeps choosing potential over peace. The real you. The one whose heart is open, but not desperate. The one whose love is deep, but not self-erasing. The one who can look at someone's confusion and not turn it into a project. That version of you is unforgettable. Because people can feel when you no longer need them to confirm your value. They can feel when your energy is no longer saying, "Please choose me," but instead, "I choose myself, and you are welcome here only if you know how to stay." That is what changes everything. Not the chase, not the waiting, not the fantasy of making someone fall at your feet. It is the moment your nervous system stops worshiping what wounds it. It is the moment your body learns that peace is not boring, that reciprocity is not too much to ask, that love can be steady without being dead. And once you feel that, truly feel it, you become almost impossible to manipulate. Because now, when someone pulls away, you don't collapse. You notice. You respect the information. You let their behavior reveal their capacity. And if they rise, they rise. If they leave, they leave. But you do not abandon yourself to make either outcome bearable. That is the power they feel. That is the energy that lingers in their chest after you're gone. Not because you became cruel, not because you played hard to get, not because you mastered some dark psychology trick, because you became whole enough to stop bargaining with your soul for breadcrumbs. And that is when the entire game dies. Maybe they come back softer. Maybe they come back shaken. Maybe they come back with the kind of hunger that only absence can teach. Or maybe they don't. And for the first time, that does not destroy you. Because your identity is no longer built around being the exception to someone else's damage. Your identity is built around your own standards now. Your own calm. Your own self-respect. Your own refusal to call suffering devotion. So let them feel the silence. Let them sit in the space they created. Let them wonder why your energy no longer reaches out to rescue what they keep dropping. And while they are wondering, while they are replaying your warmth, your steadiness, your absence, while they are finally meeting the emotional consequence they spent so long avoiding, build a life that does not tremble at someone else's uncertainty. Build a mind that does not romanticize confusion. Build a heart that knows the difference between intensity and truth. Build a self that would rather be alone than slowly erased. Because in the end, the most powerful thing you can ever do to an avoidant is not make them your slave. It has become so deeply rooted in your own worth that their inability to love consistently no longer has the power to define your reality. And when you reach that point, something almost sacred happens. You stop chasing closure. You stop chasing them. You stop chasing anyone. And somehow, in that quiet, the whole world starts moving toward you.